Wake up, wake up. It is Friday, January the 24th, and it looks like the 49ers may have both a defensive coordinator and a special teams coordinator. The wait has come to an end. Let's talk right now.
Friday, January 24th, we're brought to you by Sam's Chowder House. And like Larry says, the wait is over. And by that, what we really mean is keep waiting because nothing's official yet. But boy, it's coming more and more into focus. And Larry, who would have ever believed that our lives, our careers, our football conversation was still so directly tied to the decisions being made around Trent Baalke, who we all know is the world's most famous football guy. Well, because Trent is officially now out of Jacksonville, it looks like Liam Coen is officially going to take that job, which means there's one less head coaching job for Robert Saleh to take, which means maybe he's interested in the Raiders. Oh, wait a minute. This morning, Pete Carroll has been announced as the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. And the game of musical chairs, Larry, is running out of chairs for Robert Saleh to land in. It sounds like him coming back to San Francisco was always a big part of the plan, and it looks like that plan is going to come to fruition.
Well, and it's, for the 49ers, they avoid a lot of embarrassment here because they had all their eggs in the Robert Saleh basket. I guess you could say their fallback was Brandon Staley, but their fallback would have pissed off their fans. So this was a way to, keep your defensive staff of coaches. All those coaches that the Niners have coached under Robert Saleh in the past. This is a way to stay with your 4-3 wide 9. So you get continuity. This is a way to satisfy some of the defensive players who like Nick Sorensen, like Fred Warner and Nick Bosa, with a guy who's, has better credentials. I think this is a way to get a higher energy, more veteran, more independent defensive coach out there in Saleh. I don't think there's going to be any Kyle Shanahan's worried about Saleh's doing this and that. And then I think Saleh's coattails also this time are substantial because this time around, he had some leverage. The 49ers needed him probably more than he needed them, to be completely honest. And so he not only comes in, but it looks like he's going to bring his handpicked Jets special teams coach, Brant Boyer, as the special teams coach. So his coattails were enough to carry the special teams coach. He's probably going to get record-setting money for a defensive coordinator. I'm not sure exactly what that will be. And the 49ers get really a couple things. They get the continuity that they wanted, but where this thing really, the real wrinkle here is that Liam Coen deciding to go to Jacksonville in the 11th hour and kind of do an end around the Buccaneers. One, it's not necessarily great for Cohen's reputation in the league because he kind of shanked the Buccaneers. He kind of went silent on the Buccaneers after they had an agreement to have him stay as the OC. But now he, as the Jacksonville head coach, what that does is it ends their search. And I kind of wonder, Damon. I know Shad Khan wanted an offensive coach. I had a guy on last night from Jacksonville who basically said as much. They wanted an offensive coach. They're trying to save and reclaim the career of Trevor Lawrence. But there was a lot of interest in Joe Brady, the Bills' offensive coordinator. There's a lot of interest in the Eagles' OC, Kellen Moore. They were considered strong contenders. And I think if Cohen had sat it out, the Niners may have had to wait until after Super Bowl 59 on February the 9th before they realistically could have had Robert Saleh because of those, the desire of the Jags to talk to Brady and to talk to Kellen Moore. So the Niners need to get their program going and let Shad Khan and Ethan Waugh figure out, what Jacksonville's doing. But I think this is a huge break for the Niners because they need to get on to the task at hand, which is, Let's get in the room, evaluate the season, get a game plan for free agency in the draft, and go execute it.
Well, and you want to get in the game. And you don't want to wait to be dealt into the game. You don't want to wait to sit down at the card table. You want to walk into the casino, put your money down, and start playing. And the 49ers have been waiting for all the right reasons, because they really like Saleh, waiting for him to do his due diligence and, make sure that his career path is carved out the right way. But you play a little bit of a, game of chicken there, waiting against other NFL teams. But again, sometimes the league breaks correctly around you and it goes in your direction. And it looks like that's happening. The Pete Carroll to the Las Vegas Raiders, that is, made Robert Saleh coming back to the 49ers a much easier thing to assume is about to happen, because that might have been the other head coaching option that was really put in front of him. Brian Schottenheimer is being rumored to the Cowboys. It didn't sound like there was any real strong or credible rumor to Saleh getting involved as the Dallas Cowboys' next head coach. So I really wasn't worried about that. But Vegas,
he was a candidate,
right? But was he a strong candidate? It didn't really seem.
He was like 5-1 as of yesterday.
Okay.
And he was like fourth on the board. I think it was Schottenheimer, Kellen Moore, somebody else, and then Robert Saleh. So he was always kind of a distant choice there.
Yeah.
I think the prerequisite in Dallas is that the score with Jerry and his kid, and that's why Kellen Moore makes a lot of sense for them, because he's coached there before. He knows the dysfunction, and he's okay with the dysfunction. That's part of it. It's like, if you're going to have a situation where you have your kids in the player personnel department, that is described by most professionals as dysfunction, and that's what the situation is. If you have Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones, central figures in your draft war room.
Right, that's your deal with the devil. You're taking it. You can't.
That's the deal. If you want to know what the deal is, that's the deal.
That's the deal.
Yeah, and it's also why you're never going to win, most likely. But it is a huge day today for Pete Carroll. He's 73 years old. He makes history today. Adam Schefter says Pete Carroll will make history today as the oldest head coach in NFL history. The title belongs to Romeo Crennel, who was 73 years old and 199 days for his last game on January 3rd, 2021 with the Texans. Carroll will turn 74 on September the 15th. What do you think of that hire? He's an older guy, but I'll say this. I kind of think it's a smart hire.
Larry, it's stabilizing to a franchise that could really use some stabilizing. It's instant credibility. It's the ability to step onto an AFC West field knowing that you're not just out-coached by experience before the game even kicks off. Nobody's got more experience than Pete Carroll, basically, in this league. And he's also, and this is going to sound weird because we just talked about how old he is, in a weird way, he's age appropriate, because he's not trying to come and have an 8-year, 12-year run with the Raiders. He's like a stopgap, really credible head coach to get Tom Brady to identify the next young up-and-coming coordinator who will someday take over for Pete Carroll. It makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? It makes an awful lot of sense. And Pete obviously still wants the job. He's taking a job in the NFL not even knowing who the quarterback is. That's an awfully big ask, and maybe you can't ask a coach with a lot of options to come and take that deal. Pete Carroll, I think, knows the deal with the Raiders that's going to be somewhat dysfunctional. You have a somewhat meddlesome owner, but at least you got now Tom Brady holding him by his hand and maybe leading him in the right direction for the first time in a long time. I like it too. It's a
way different hire, though. Damon, I like Pete Carroll, and Pete Carroll is an excellent football coach. So I would never even take one step in the direction of it's not a good hire. But last week you were talking about Ben Johnson, and you were talking about, Tom Brady and Ben Johnson and, the sky's the limit.
Hey, Tom
And
Brady found out that Raiders stink rubs off more on him than his excellence rubs off on the Raiders, right?
I
Ben
guess,
Johnson.
I guess,
Ben Johnson also is, unlike Pete Carroll, it sounds like at the center of Ben Johnson's decision to take the Chicago Bears job, besides the huge pile of money that they put in front of him, is he's really interested in working with the young Caleb Williams. Who's he going to go work with, to be determined in Las Vegas. So I think that was a big, big difference maker for Ben Johnson. And obviously Pete Carroll is at the point where he's not going to have a lot of options. So he can't play this really picky, I'm going to wait for the right job for me. Who would have ever had Pete Carroll back in the NFL as a head coach before Bill Belichick, right? I mean, who had that on their bingo card? But here we are. It's Pete Carroll.
Belichick took himself out of the running.
He did.
Back to Saleh for a second. I thought that it was an interesting year for Robert Saleh this year in that, it didn't work out with the Jets. He gets fired. And he largely gets fired because they couldn't get the quarterback situation right? They took Zach Wilson, number 2 overall, gave him a couple years, didn't work out, went to Aaron Rodgers, then he blows an Achilles. Then this year he kind of looked old and he just wasn't quite the same guy. And so even though they're defensively were pretty solid throughout Saleh's tenure, offensively they could never get it right. And there's just a lot of negativity. You talk about the Raiders have some dysfunction and negativity. The Jets maybe even have more. But I thought it was an interesting year.
Good, Larry. Where Saleh really looks good is the Jets got worse when they asked him to leave, right?
Well, that was my point. I mean, they were 2-3 under Saleh. They finished after that 3-9. In the 5 games before his dismissal, they ranked 5th in defensive EPA. They ranked 31st in defensive EPA after he was fired. And not only that, the Jets their discipline just totally fell apart. They led the NFL in defensive penalties. So, I don't know if that takes the bloom off the old brick rose, if it puts more of a bloom on the Saleh resume. But it is interesting to me that Robert Saleh, I think Niner fans, it's so how quickly we forget everything that we want to forget. And the thing that people want to forget is that Niner fans hated Robert Saleh. And they don't, nobody seems to remember that. Robert Saleh was the first defensive coordinator of Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch and their regime in 2017. They tried to get Gus Bradley. He said no. They went to Robert Saleh. The team initially struggled largely because they didn't have good personnel. And they weren't good in 17. They weren't good in 18. By 18, Saleh was getting criticized heavily for just being kind of bland. And, he doesn't dial up a lot of exotic blitzes and he's not doing a whole lot. And then what happened? What happened then? They brought in Chris Kasarik. They brought in D Ford. They brought in Nick Bosa. And suddenly, 2019, it's a totally different team. They're in the Super Bowl, and everybody loves Robert Saleh. And pretty soon he's riding off into the sunset, getting the Jets gig, and it's time for D'Amico. But, it's people forget that it isn't about coaches in pro sports. Coaches matter, but ultimately, I'll take a good coach with great players over a great coach with good players. And we're not there anymore. This isn't the 85 Bears. This isn't the scheme doesn't rule the day. It's the athletes that rule the day. And Saleh is now walking into a situation, Damon, where the Niners allowed a 100-yard rusher almost every week. They went without a sack in 4 of their last 6 games of the year. They have major, major holes on this defense. So, yes, is it a good day? Did they get their guy? Is he going to fit in? Is he going to give them a continuity piece? Is he going to be popular with the coaches, players, and fans? Yeah, so it checks all the boxes, and it's a win-win-win-win-win. But it don't mean anything if you don't get the players. So, I mean, that's just the bottom line. And the one thing I thought was interesting, Shanahan's biggest critique of Sorensen was that when they didn't get pressure with their front four, he didn't really have any adjustments or any answers or anything that he could, any counter.
Right. There was no plan B. But plan B never really showed itself. And plan A wasn't that impressive to begin with.
Well, if you can't get home with 4, you got to blitz. And they didn't get home with 4, and they were bottom of the league in sacks or near the bottom, and they were 31st in blitz rate. So
right, and they were terrible in blitz effectiveness too. Like not only were they a low volume blitzer, when they did blitz,
they didn't get home.
invited the quarterback to hit an open target more than they rushed the quarterback. So it was.
And the Jets don't blitz either under Saleh. They were 22nd in blitz percentage. But my whole point is, I think that the energy will be better. The belief will be better. I think Chris Kasarik, Johnny Holland, Daniel Bullocks, who all coached under Saleh previously, will all still remain. So the Niners will have the continuity that they seek. And they took a chance here, man, because they only interviewed Brandon Staley, Robert Saleh, and Deshae Townsend. They satisfied the Rooney Rule, but they didn't interview anybody. It was all about Robert Saleh, and luckily Liam Cohen pivoted and took that Jacksonville job. Otherwise, who knows? Not only could the Niners have lost out on Saleh, but they may have lost out on about almost a month of interviewing, because it might not have gotten decided till the middle of February.
Look, I don't know if this was a backdoor agreement or under the table understanding or a little bit of luck along the way. I guess it really doesn't matter. They got their guy in Robert Saleh, if indeed this does happen. We're talking about is if it's official. It is still unofficial, but man, there is every single indication that the wind is blowing in Robert Saleh's direction. I like the hire, Larry. You talked about how unpopular he was, and then when the 49ers found success, he became popular. It just shows you that fans really don't know what to react to besides wins and losses in terms of evaluating anything. I don't know how much of a better coach Robert Saleh was in 2019 as opposed to 2018, but the results changed. Let me just for a minute, and I like it. I like Robert Saleh's return. Can I just devil's advocate it for just a second?
Sure.
Just thinking out loud here, right? In any way, should we look at this as kind of an uninspired choice? You talked so much about, I think rightfully so, Larry, about making guys uncomfortable. Is Saleh a comfortable retreat point? Is he a comfort? Is he going to make things comfortable around the 49ers, or is Robert Saleh coming in here hair on fire? Not that he has hair, but the scorned revenge tour, trying to rebuild my own reputation. Not that my reputation was damaged, but the Jets tried to damage my reputation. So is there any part of you that thinks that this is a little bit of an uninspired hire? I think that the Buster Posey hire for the San Francisco Giants, there's a lot I like about it. There's an awful lot that took no imagination at all, I guess, to kind of do that. I don't know if it's a really inspired or uninspired job. What do you really think of the Saleh hire? Are you apprehensive about it in any way, shape, or form?
I mean, this is a continuity hire. Yeah, I mean, I do think they need to make themselves uncomfortable. It's a hard thing to embrace, right? We all go to what's comfortable. So it's a hard thing to embrace. What did I mean by that? What I meant by that is just that, the 49ers need to, think outside the box and start getting, real, because they weren't nearly good enough. It wasn't like, if they just got this call. They won 6 games. They were nowhere near good enough. Was the schedule tough? Yeah, but they won 6 games. When you win 6 games, you didn't miss the playoffs by a razor's edge. It wasn't a call. It wasn't one thing. Right. You've been set back significantly. Right. I mean, and not only that, it's not one thing. It's not like, if CMC had not, no. If IU could just, no. There's massive backsliding personnel wise on this team, and it's not about one decision. It's about many decisions in 21, 22, and 23 that are coming home to roost. So I guess you could make the argument that it's uninspired if you were dead set on them changing their scheme. And then there are those who believe that the 34 front is a better front to go with than the wide 9, 4-3 base scheme where you play a lot of cover three on the back end. You're seeing more of too high safety. You're seeing more of 34 fronts and a little bit more disguise as far as where the pressure's coming from. A little bit more sim pressures and there's a little bit more disguise ability in the 3-4 where Nick Bosa theoretically could rush or Nick Bosa could drop into coverage. Now he drops into coverage from time to time, even in the wide 9. But it's much more of a get up the field and let the linebackers do the second level,
Bosa is so
work.
versatile. He could play your D tackle in a 3-4.
I mean, he could, but I mean, there's a reason that they stayed with their 4-3, and I think he's the number one reason. He's their best defensive player, and he likes to put his hand in the dirt. He can do a 2-point stance, but it's a totally different thing. And they want to stay. They want him to be comfortable. It's not the only reason, but I think it's the main reason that they're staying with their 4-3. They also like Chris Kasarik. They also don't feel like they want to trade out a whole room of defensive linemen. They would probably have to do exactly that. Because, if you look at the Niners, Kalia Davis, one gap penetrator. Kevin Givens, one gap penetrator. So many of their defensive interior players are kind of one gap penetrators and not these two gappers who are super broad and wide and strong. And
right. Jerry
so
Ball,
you'd have to change out like 7 guys, 8 guys on your defensive line. So I understand why they chose continuity. And if you listen to Bill Belichick on Inside the NFL 3 weeks ago, he really made the point that continuity is much more important than people think. And that every time you change your scheme, you're at a major competitive disadvantage for a couple of years as your staff and players learn that scheme and all the nuances attached to it. So while other teams are running their scheme and have stayed with the same scheme, like Kansas City has for a long time, or like New England did for a long time, and then they start to perfect it. You get to year 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, we're way ahead of our opponents, especially if they keep changing their scheme. So if you want to see the Niners switch the scheme, then you would be like they took the easy way out. But ultimately, they chose continuity, and I think it's important that they stayed with it. Why? Because this offseason, the Niners are trying to introduce an offensive coordinator, change the special teams coordinator and the defensive coordinator, and have a volume-based draft where they bring in 15 to 20 new faces. So you got to have some continuity, and I think it makes sense here.
And in the name of continuity, let me ask you, what becomes of Brandon Staley now? How does Robert Saleh view Brandon Staley? Trusted agent to help him put together the defense that he dreams of, or somebody who might have been a leftover, not subversive presence? Obviously, Brandon Staley's not going to try to undercut anybody because Brandon Staley wants to eat too. What becomes of Brandon Staley? His name has not appeared in anyone's coordinator coaching searches anywhere outside of San Francisco. He hasn't been asked to interview anywhere. Is Brandon Staley part of Robert Saleh's defensive staff?
My guess is no,
because Nick Sorensen is out.
My guess is no, that Brandon Staley will not be not be on the staff. But I don't know that for sure. I'll say this. Just looking at the odds yesterday from Jaguars, Saints, Raiders, and Cowboys head coaching search, Brandon Staley's name does not appear on any of those lists as even a candidate. So
the Niners haven't said a single thing about a request to interview him. I mean, it just seems like Brandon Staley, but for his position with the Niners, has no position in the NFL.
Well, he had 1 year as a defensive coordinator. They were number 1 in yards, number 1 in points. So, I mean, then he had a high-profile flame-out with the Chargers where it was pretty clear the players stopped playing for him, and he went for it on a bunch of high-profile fourth downs that didn't get it, and kind of got the moniker of just like he's like analytic guy to the death. And
right, he became the poster child for a little too aggressivo on fourth down.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'll say this: I interviewed him this summer. I talked to Demo Lenore, who said that he's the Kyle Shanahan of defense.
Yeah.
So, and Lenore doesn't pull any punches. So, I mean, Brandon Staley worked with corners this year, and impressed them enough that Demo had incredible things to say about him. So I think Brandon Staley's a really good, interesting football coach. I think he's a smart guy.
Here's the thing: if Saleh's cool with it, and that defensive backfield likes him enough to want to keep him around, I would do it. We're sitting here. The theme of today.
He has a contract. He has a contract.
Right? Yeah.
So he's under contract. So they would have to decide not to have him.
Right.
Like if everything stays status quo, he'll be back. He'll be on the Niners staff in some capacity.
In this still undefined, no one really knows Svengali type of role.
But I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think that, it's typical when you hire a high profile coach like a Robert Saleh that it's in the typical situation. They don't want other guys who can do their job also in the building.
I wonder if Robert Saleh is going to ask for an assistant head coaching moniker to be attached to his defensive coordinator title.
Well, I mean, I think Saleh's hot right now. So Saleh got the Brant Boyer to be, most likely the Niners special teams hire. He came from the Jets with Saleh. So, my guess at this point is that the Niners have already made it perfectly clear they're willing to make Saleh the highest paid defensive coordinator in all of football. To what degree they're willing to spend, I don't know, but I got to think he's probably going to make $6-7 million a year as the coordinator. So, and his coattails included the special team coach. So my guess is they're going to do probably everything and anything to make him happy, which leads us to our second topic, which is what players may join him. And I did a video on this last week. And I just went through and looked at the Jets' free agents to be, and looked at
Kinlaw, come on home.
Well, a couple of the guys I don't think make sense. Javon Kinlaw, I don't think makes sense. Hassan Reddick, I don't think is right. I don't think he's coming to the Niners. But let me give you six names that I think are interesting that may very well could come to the Niners. None of them are going to be big ticket items. Okay, we'll go back to front. Number 6 on the list, Ashton Davis, the former Cal Bear. He's 28. He came into his own this year, Damon. He's 6'1", 200-pound safety. He's also a special teamer. He had 9 tackles against Miami. He had 9 tackles against Buffalo. This guy's a great story. He was a walk-on hurdler at Cal who had 4.4 speed. And then he became, the special teams MVP. He's a high character guy. He has rare physical gifts. And he's fast and very athletic. And he's coming off a year where he played pretty well. So Ashton Davis, I could see the Niners need a safety. He's a safety and he's athletic.
Yeah. Safety depth, special teams help. Guys had a successful turn on special teams with the Jets. That makes a lot of sense. Although
very smart.
And it'd have to be a very comfortable price point, though, because the 49ers can't be spending an awful lot on more safety depth. They've got a lot of safety depth wrapped up in their young players. So,
yeah, I mean, I don't expect the Niners to have a big free agent period anyway. I think most of their work's going to be done in the draft. But I'm just saying, of these 6 names, the Niners could wind up with 1 or 2 of these. Right, they won't wind up with all 6, but maybe 1 or 2. So that's 1. That's Ashton Davis. Number 5, and that was 6. We'll count from 6 down. Number 5 on the list is.
Will Solomon Thomas be on this list, Larry?
Yes, he will be. Lecky Fotu is number 5 on the list. Okay. He's 6'5", 340-pound defensive tackle, played at Utah. He's only 26. This guy's really interesting. He's got 34 and a 1/4 inch arms, super long arms, 4th-round pick by Arizona in 2020. Awesome athlete. This guy was a rugby player who was so good as a rugby player that he made the U.S. national team. And he only played 1 year of high school football. Didn't even start playing high school football until he was a junior in high school. And somehow, despite not playing until his junior year in high school, he became first-team All-Pac-12 as a junior in college. He was a third-team All-American at his final year. He's got 2 other brothers who also play college football. Natural strength, kind of an odd front nose guard. If you want to go to a little bit more of a 4-3, 3-4 hybrid, which who knows, that could be part of the plan. He's an odd front nose guard, but he's just a big behemoth in the middle. Lecky Fotu.
Size.
Huge.
Size.
He's a poor man's Vita Vea. I heard people saying last week or a couple weeks ago, go get Vita Vea. Okay, well, Vita Vea is only one of a kind, and he ain't going anywhere. Baalke Fotu is kind of like a Vita Vea. Fourth on the list is Saleh Thomas, who's 29, 6'3", 295 pounds, 26 tackles this year, 3.5 sacks, had a forced fumble, had a fumble recovery. 4 years, with the Niners, 1 year with the Raiders, 3 years with the Jets. He's a high effort, high motor backup. So, if you want to say goodbye to, he's Kevin Givens who plays harder and smarter. That's what he is. I don't know if he's a fit, but Robert Saleh likes him. Now I'll give you the 3 guys that are most likely to be Niners from Robert Saleh's Jets team. Chaz Surratt, the linebacker from Carolina, 6'2", 230-pound linebacker who ran in the 4.5s his pro day. He was a former Carolina quarterback. He's now 27, super fast, 4.5 speed, super strong, 27 reps of 225. First team All-ACC, final year there. He was a decorated high school quarterback in North Carolina, but just a very athletic kid, productive tackler, tough, smart, competitive, work ethic. He had 28 tackles this year off the bench. They're super deep at linebacker. So Chaz Surratt, I think this guy's likely to be a Niner just because I think Robert Saleh probably really likes him.
Can I guess?
He's really athletic.
Isaiah Oliver, cornerback.
No. Can't go Isaiah Oliver. Okay. Number 2 on the list is DJ Reed, which you could probably guess, right?
Yep.
Former Niner. The only downside for DJ Reed is that he's 28 at this point, and he had 19 penalties over the last 2 seasons. In fact, he had a career high 11 penalties this year. But you know what? He can play outside. He can play the slot. He's super great against the run.
$11 million he made last year doing very little for the Jets.
He did well. He started 46 games in 3 seasons with the Jets, and he also had 64 tackles this year with 52 solo, 11 passes defensed. He had a 70.1 PFF coverage grade this year, and since he's joined the Jets in 2022, he's ranked 15th in PFF overall grade, 8th overall among corners in coverage. But there's a lot of talk that Arizona, who's got $72 million of cap room, top 10 in cap room, that they want him and he'll go there. So unlikely that he comes here, but DJ Reed could make sense. The guy who would be the number 1 target if you're the 49ers, and Robert Saleh would have to do a hell of a sell job and to get this guy, but this guy is a hell of a player.
Don't say Aaron Rodgers. Don't say Aaron Rodgers. Don't say Aaron Rodgers.
No.
Okay.
Aaron Rodgers and Saleh don't like each other.
No, they don't.
Jamie Sherwood, the 25-year-old linebacker, converted safety, who played at Auburn, 6'2", 215-pound linebacker. This guy was PFF's highest-graded Jets defender this year, 73.8. Stepped in for C.J. Mosley, and he was badass. Jamie Sherwood had 10 or more tackles in a game 7 times this year. He had 18 tackles against the Dolphins. He had 17 against Arizona. He had 7 tackles and 2 sacks against Houston. He's from Florida, played at Auburn, 5th-round pick by the Jets in the 21 draft. But, man, this guy's everything you want.
His agent's Drew Rosenhaus. Rosenhaus and the Niners make nice together. He's only 25. He just turned 25, Larry, on January 12th. So, yeah.
He's got my birthday. Are you saying January 12th?
January 12th.
Yeah, we share a birthday. But this guy's a sure tackler. He's got 34-inch arms, super long arms. He's a big-time hitter. He can cover the tight end. He was the team MVP. In fact, the defensive coordinator who took over for Robert Saleh, who went to Atlanta, Jeff Ulbrich, said that he was the team's hardest working player, and they rewarded him at the end of the year. He studied Cam Chancellor. He studied Jalen Ramsey. This guy has turned himself from a college safety into a new age linebacker, and he's one of the most underrated players in pro football. So if the Niners could get one player from the Jets, that's who you want, Jamie Sherwood.
You can make one decision this weekend about a little getaway, something to do for lunch. I want you to think about Sam's Chowder House, our sponsor here on Wake Up, thanks to Sam's, and they've got a delicious little weekend just waiting for you down in Half Moon Bay. There she is, the belle of the ball, the lobster roll. Cioppino, paella, everything you could ever want down at Sam's Chowder House. It is a lovely day. Hopefully you get under a blanket, around a fire pit. It's good times, Larry. Go ahead and get yourself to Sam's Chowder House. Do it this weekend.
Sam's is amazing. Sam, it's an incredible spot any time of the year. The view is amazing. The food's amazing. But I will say this. What separates Sam's from every place I've ever been as a restaurant is the smell of the seafood, the fire, and the ocean. It's the most amazing smelling restaurant that you've ever been to. It is incredible. It's like the perfect atmosphere it's just an amazing spot. And by the way, we should tell people I'm doing my third annual meet and greet this weekend during championship weekend. I'll be at Pig and a Pickle in Corte Madera on Sunday from 11 a.m. till 3 p.m. for our meet and greet, MEAT and greet. Stop by, have some barbecue, watch the Commanders and the Eagles game with me, and hang out and meet Damon and Mary. Have some brisket chili. Say hello. Nothing formal. It's very informal. It's probably going to be a packed house anyway because it's championship Sunday, and there'll be a bunch of people in the mall. There'll be a bunch of people in watching football. So, but I'll be there from 11 a.m. till 3 p.m. at Pig and a Pickle in Corte Madera on Sunday for the third annual Krug Show meet and greet. And I'm always impressed by how far people come. I'm only going to be there between, as I said, from 11 to 3. So, I do understand if you're coming from really far and you can't get there. I won't be there after 3 because I gotta pick up my wife from the airport. My wife's going to Vegas with her sisters this weekend for the Shania Twain concert. So I do have to get away. I won't be able to sit there. I wanted to sit there from like 11 a.m. to like 6 p.m., 7 p.m. and just hang out for both games. But I unfortunately only can be there between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. But please stop by Sunday at Pig and a Pickle and say hello and have some brisket, have a beer, and watch some ball with us.
Larry, if we can make it up with the boys and Jillian, we're going to try to make it up there because I'm much more interested in watching that second game than I am the first game, with all due respect to the Eagles and Commanders. It's, Bills and Chiefs is what I really want to watch this weekend.
Well, we'll get to that before we get out of here as well.
Absolutely.
We'll get to those games.
But the biggest question on the table right here is not about the brisket. It's not about the brisket mac and cheese. It's not about Pig and a Pickle. It's about how many cocktails will Amy have as she walks into that Shania Twain concert. How roasty toasty is Amy going to be when that first song starts? Does she walk into the concert hammered, or does she get hammered during the concert to roll out of the concert hammered into the Vegas night? What's Amy's having fun in Vegas strategy?
Well, you know what? She's going with her sisters. So, there's 3 of them. They're all beauties. Uh-oh. So watch out, Vegas. I've already been told that, there may be a spray tan or 2 in preparation for this.
It's Vegas. Push-up bras activated.
I told her, though, make sure you have a comfortable pair of shoes because, even if you're just gonna, you want to look good. Okay, put those shoes in your bag and have another pair of shoes because the way it is. I mean, you may have to walk the 15 football fields to walk across the street. It's such a walking place. I told her, make sure you have an extra pair of shoes. And I also told her, bring a jacket. The one thing about Vegas in January and February, we were there last year at this time for the Super Bowl. It's cold.
We found out it gets chilly.
Vegas is cold. I mean, it's hot as hell in the summer, and it's hot as hell most of the time. But, man, in February, you're talking about it's different kind of cold than our cold. We're on the West Coast, so we don't have cold. We have kind of chillier days, but nothing. like the entire week in Vegas, it was a solid 40 degrees outside. Now, it may get to 40 at night in the Bay Area, but even in our days in the winter, I mean, like in the daytime today, it's still going to be like 55 degrees, 60 degrees, or whatever it's going to be. It doesn't in Vegas in the winter. It doesn't get that way. At least it didn't last year. So I told her, bring a jacket. Bring a jacket. She's like, my sisters aren't even bringing a jacket. I'm like, oh my God, bring a jacket.
Be cool. That's
yeah, they're going to be freezing.
Yeah.
They will be buying a jacket then. They will be buying a jacket.
Hopefully she has a great time. Hopefully it's a great weekend for her. Girls getaway.
Party weekend. Party weekend. I told her, cut loose.
Happy wife, happy life. So hopefully she has a great time. Since you're talking about how you're doing a Kruger meetup, I got to tell everyone we are going to do a Super Plus. Super Bowl's taken. We can't Super Bowl anything, but we can Super Plus it. On Super Bowl Sunday, we're going to be at the Halfway Club. And Larry, you've been to the Halfway Club for a Plus Mania.
Very nice spot.
I am so proud of my friends, Greg and Ethan, whose Halfway Club, they're in their first year of existence, and they just got nominated for the James Beard Award of Best New Bar in America. I mean, yes. They just got nominated for Best New Bar in America with all these other new bars from around the country. They are over the moon happy with the nomination. This is the equivalent of like the restaurant industry's Oscars. James Beard Awards are big effing deals in the restaurant business, and they've been nominated. So right before they got nominated, they invited me and the audience to come and watch the Super Bowl in their back room. And honestly, I said yes, and I'm glad I did, because the very next day they got their nomination and could probably now sell it out for twice the price of what they're giving it to me for, which is free. So, life is timing. Everyone, you're invited to come and watch the Super Bowl with yours truly, Larry. Maybe you even come on out that day. Come to the Halfway Club. We're going to have food and drink specials. We're going to have the back room to ourselves. We got the outdoor patio for safety meetings, and it's going to be a great time. So come on out to the Halfway Club. So proud of them. Their new James Beard Award nomination. It's freaking awesome, man. So
it's a great spot, man. A great spot. The guy who owns it's a terrific guy, and the food is good. The beer's good. The drinks are good.
Yeah, baby.
Really cool looking bar too. It's very cool, and there's a lot of. It'll be a good time. It'll be a good time. I haven't finalized Super Bowl plans just yet.
Fair enough.
But I could see myself there.
We'd love to have you there, obviously. Look, to get to the Super Bowl, though, you need to make it through Championship Sunday. We got to talk a little bit about these games. And Larry, let's start with the first game, which is Commanders and Eagles. And, I was thinking about this. Should the Washington Commanders reach the Super Bowl, should they go into Philadelphia and beat the Eagles, are the Commanders the least likely Super Bowl team of our lifetimes, Larry?
The least likely Super Bowl team of our lifetime.
So
wow, that's a big statement. I would
let me set the stage for you. So they're 12-4. It's their first double-digit winning season in a dozen years. So you can't say you saw this coming. You certainly didn't see it coming with new ownership, rookie quarterback, and a brand new front office. All these free agents that they added. This is way ahead of schedule. It's just their second winning season of any kind since 2013. That was the peak of the Jay Gruden era, where they had a wild card appearance after a 9-7 season. They go through a team rebrand. Their 12 wins this year didn't even get them a home playoff game. They went on the road at the 1 seed. Now they got to go to Philadelphia. They are Larry, I think they're the least likely team to reach a Super Bowl since what? The Jake Delhomme Panthers, or maybe the Kurt Warner Rams. But by the time the season went along, you could see that the Rams had something cooking that nobody expected. And I guess you could say that out of this team.
Nobody was expecting the Super Bowl that you and I sat next to each other at. Nobody was expecting the Niners necessarily to go to the Super Bowl that year under Harbaugh.
Yeah.
But they had a lot of talent. I don't know. I'd have to go study that. I mean, which team had? I mean, the 49ers themselves were 10-6 and looking bad in '88. But they were already. They had Joe Montana and Bill Walsh, so it's like hard to say that was an underrated team or a sleeper team.
The Music
I'll
City
say this:
Miracle Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I mean, and there have been a few. I mean, there's been a few teams that have gotten to the Super Bowl. I thought everybody knows that Randy Moss and Dennis Green and Dante Culpepper that wasn't Dennis Green. It's because it was Brian Billick. The Vikings, the '98 Vikings, were an awesome team that were a record-setting offense with Chris Carter, Randy Moss, and they put up huge numbers. And the Dirty Birds beat them in the NFC Championship game, and it was Gary Anderson missed a field goal or something like that, and the Falcons beat the Vikings.
Only field goal Gary Anderson missed all year, right?
Right, and then the Dirty Birds lost to Denver. So I would say the Falcons might have been the most unlikely because that everybody had the Vikings winning that conference title game. It was in Minnesota. They were a record-setting team, and they lost. But this Washington team is worthy of talking about for a second because I tried to get a hold of Bob Myers this week, and he said that he'll come on the show, but he's not going to come on for a couple weeks. He hasn't done a lot of Commanders interviews, but Bob Myers deserves a ton of credit. He left the Warriors. You got him?
Because I got an old number for Bob. My Bob number.
I just contacted him through Commanders PR.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I know the Commander PR guy, so I just his name's D Barbieri, so I just sent him a note. Can I talk to Bob Myers? Vis-a-vis my cell phone. Vis-a-vis.
Give me a few weeks.
But no, the Commanders. I mean, what an amazing Bob Myers had a dead end situation. He's a very talented guy. Joe Lacob fired him, and whether it came out that way or not, that's what happened. So he's sitting there and he leaves and he goes and joins Adam Peters as part of this. Let's jumpstart the Commanders. And Peters, I mean, he knew him from the UCLA connection. Peters went to UCLA. Myers went to UCLA. He hires Adam Peters. Peters hires Dan Quinn. They hire Cliff Kingsbury as the offensive coordinator. And they went out and they signed like 20 free agents. I mean, a lot of free agents. KJ Osborne, Alam Zacchaeus, the wide receiver, Nick Allegretti, my buddy, who I texted yesterday. I'm like, Nick, go win the Super Bowl. He's their left guard. Tyler Biadasz, from Dallas. Bobby Wagner, Andrew Wiley, Zach Ertz, Frankie Louvu, Jeremy Chin. I mean, they traded for Marshawn Lattimore. They signed Noah Igbenogany. I mean, it was a ton of dudes. Nick Bellore, Cleveland Farrell. I mean, just all kinds of dudes. Austin Eckler, Marcus Mariota. I mean, they went and signed a ton of people. Then they went out in the draft, and they drafted Jaden Daniels at the top of the draft. And he's been awesome, incredible. They drafted Luke McCaffrey. They drafted Ben Sinnott. They drafted Johnny Newton on the defensive line. They drafted Mikey Sainristil, who's become an incredible corner for them. And I think they're going to beat Philly in Philly, and I think they're going to win the Super Bowl in a couple weeks. I do believe in this Commanders team right now. They're converting 87% of their fourth downs. So they're a very difficult team to have to defend. They've got two really good running backs. Brian Robinson is a horse. Austin Eckler can catch the hell out of the football. And they also have Jeremy McNichols and Chris Rodriguez, who are decent backs. So they got a good quarterback. They got a handful of backs. They got a power back.
Terry McLaurin might be the most underrated player in the league, really.
Exactly. Well, and if he's not the most underrated player in the league, Diami Brown is got to be one of the most underrated players in the league. Brown's had this bust-out year. They lost Sam Cosmi to an injury a couple weeks ago. He's their starting right guard, so there's a little weakness there. But that's a pretty good team. And then on defense, Dorrance Armstrong and Dante Fowler came from Dallas. You got Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen inside. Frankie Louvu, Bobby Wagner on the second level, that's elite. Louvu's amazing. Wagner's still playing at a high level. But where they're really, really good, Damon, is that Sainer still, who's an amazing corner. Igbenogany was a first-round pick. He's now playing like it. And Marshawn Lattimore was traded for at the deadline. He's terrific. And they got Jeremy Chin and Quan Martin at the safety spots. They're good. Zane Gonzalez is their kicker. I like the Commanders, man, especially with Jalen Hurts not being 100%. Philly, by the way, Damon, is 14-1 in the last 15 games. The only loss to the Commanders.
So if the Commanders get up early on the Eagles, they're going to have to front run this game. They're going to have to strike fast and early and make the Eagles play catch up and see what Jalen Hurts' status is. If I am the Commanders, I am hitting Jalen Hurts really hard early and often in this game, and I am testing that knee of his. If the Eagles win, it's going to be because Saquon Barkley had another 180-yard day where he's, ripping off 60-yard touchdowns on the ground for you. And he might do that because that's what he's been doing all year. But there is some familiarity there. Like you said, the Commanders have beaten this Eagles team. They're division opponents. Things can go sideways when teams are familiar with each other. Should be a really good game. Should be a really, really good game. I still think the Eagles carry the day at home. But put the Commanders in the Super Bowl. I'm into it. Now it's not.
It's a division matchup, so all the bets are off. They did split this year. Philly won in Philly, and then the Commanders won in Maryland. And that game was the game that I think the game the Commanders won. Hurts barely played. It was Kenny Pickett. So we'll see. But I mean, the one thing about Hurts is, man, you saw him last week. He suffered. He got wrenched. Both knees looked like they got twisted pretty bad. I would be very surprised if Jalen Hurts is moving well in this game. And the other injury that I think is pretty significant that should be discussed, you mentioned how great Terry McLaurin is, and you're totally right on the money. The big injury for the Eagles is Quinyon Mitchell, their first-round draft choice, who's been fantastic all year, one of the best young corners in pro football. He suffered an injury early in that game last week and left the field and never returned. And I don't know his status for this game, but
they're going to ask Cooper DeJean to move over, right?
Yeah, but I mean, Quinyon Mitchell's is incredible. And when you lose good corners, it's hard to.
Wrong time of the year to be doing that.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, they're leaning. The Eagles have had some injuries here. They're leaning on Oren Burks, who played great. They're leaning on they're a little dinged up in the second. They're a little dinged up on the defensive side of the ball. But I think it's gonna. If you tell me the Eagles are gonna win, if the Eagles pound Saquon Barkley, they very well could win this game, and they're really, really good at home. But there's something about the Commanders that they're rolling, and I don't know exactly. They look like a team that's so young and so fresh and new that they're just the excitement of the playoffs is carrying the day. They don't look tired at all.
No,
like
they don't know.
Teams.
They weren't supposed to be here. They're playing with house money. They all know it. And yeah, look good, feel good, play good. There should be no looser team than this team right here. And they're playing like it. After going in Detroit and surviving that buzzsaw of an atmosphere, they should feel real good about going into Philadelphia. Here we go. It's going to be great. Championship Sunday is promising. And Larry, it's really not often in life where you get to the nothing to even debate, the honest to God, really, truly, really, really, really biggest game of an athlete's young career. But that's where we are with Josh Allen. This is the biggest game of Josh Allen's career, trying to slay the dragon at Arrowhead against the Chiefs. This is him being 0-3 in his career against the Chiefs in the playoffs. The only quarterback who is 0-4 against one team in the postseason is Aaron Rodgers against the San Francisco 49ers. So Josh Allen, let me tell you this, Josh. If you're the first quarterback to win a Super Bowl in Buffalo, they might enshrine you into the Hall of Fame while you're still active. Like, that's how big this is. If Josh Allen does this and gets Buffalo back to a Super Bowl, he's a golden god. And then if he wins that Super Bowl, oh my God. But this is it. This is the biggest game of Josh Allen's career. Nothing's even close. There's no one with more riding on any one game this weekend than what Josh Allen has riding on his career reputation. This is a monster, Larry.
Well, and you look at some of the numbers on this game. Chiefs are a 2-point favorite. They'll kick this off at 3:30 Pacific. Patrick Mahomes, Damon, 21-1 in his last 22 games. The only loss coming against Buffalo. And in Kansas City's last 11 playoff games, Kansas City's opponents have been called for nearly double the amount of penalties that the Chiefs have. That to me is annoying. And I don't know. I don't want to sit there and be like, there's a fix. I don't want to be that, but I don't like the fact that the Chiefs have gotten so many calls.
And I'm not going to advocate for it, but I will say this has been the best team in football for the last 2 years, 3 years, if you want to include this regular season. And to qualify for the conversation of best team in football, you're probably not picking up a lot of flags. You know what I mean? Like, I'm excellent football teams don't get a lot of penalties called against them.
I know, but for one game, 2 games, it's a little too much. It's a little too much. Here are the numbers. Here are how it pans out. Penalty numbers in the last 11 Chiefs playoff games. And Mahomes said Wednesday he doesn't believe the Chiefs get favorable calls. But in the last 11 Chiefs playoff games, Kansas City's had 36 penalties for 319 yards. Their opponents have had 66 penalties for 541 yards. All I got to say is, you know what? For the good of the NFL, I don't want to see another ticky-tack personal foul against some Buffalo Bill against Patrick Mahomes.
I want to see
they better get their money's worth. And here's the thing, Damon. I know this is going to sound bad, and a lot of people will be like, Krug, you lack, character or whatever. But beating Mahomes is so much about hitting Mahomes. The only team that's ever beaten Mahomes in the Super Bowl was the Buccaneers, and it was jailbreak on Mahomes because he didn't have his offensive tackles, and the Bucs got a bunch of hits on Mahomes, and they beat him. So,
not every hit on Mahomes was called a roughing.
But if I'm Buffalo, I am getting a hit on Patrick Mahomes early in this game, and if I have to trade, since you're gonna get the call, you're not getting the calls anyway. You might as well just tee off on him one time and see if you can make him feel you. Because make it count. Seriously, hit this guy. Let's see what this guy looks like when he takes a few hits. And stop protecting him. He's 230 pounds. It's really kind of unbecoming of the league the way they, some of those penalties. The last game, the 2 penalties were just so embarrassing, and they can't do that again. So, but anyway,
I want to see them get there singing for their supper. I don't want them handed an easy-to-eat meal by the officiating crew. And there's one stat I saw that Patrick Mahomes has had more interceptions overturned by a referee's decision than any quarterback in the last 3 years. But look, say whatever you want about how annoying Mahomes has become, the flop that he looked to buy the call for last week, and all these things, and all the help that officials are giving. And there might be an awful lot of that in play. Okay, but what is also in play is the 2 best coaches in football, the best quarterback in football, the winningest team in football, the most knowing how to win close games team in football. Say whatever you want. 105-26 does not lie. That's
all the more reason not to help him out.
Yeah,
all the more reason not to help him out.
16-3 in the playoffs, 105-26 in his career. Stop helping him. He's good enough to do it maybe on his own.
Seriously. Stop helping him. By the way, back to Washington for a second. They kicked off the season 150-1 long shot to win the Super Bowl. They drifted down to 250-1 ahead of week 3. And if they win on Sunday, the Commanders would tie the 99 Rams for the longest preseason odds for a Super Bowl participant since the NFL went to the 16-game schedule in 78.
There you go.
So there you go. A $500 Super Bowl bet at 150-1 was placed on August 17th by a bettor in Virginia, and with Caesars Sportsbook. It's among the largest reported preseason wagers on the Commanders. But this stat really speaks to it. 27 teams, including the Titans, Giants, and Patriots, attracted more Super Bowl bets than the Commanders in the offseason at BetGM Sportsbooks. There were approximately 10 times as much money wagered on the Jets to win the Super Bowl than there was on the Commanders coming into September. I mean, that is amazing.
Yeah, that's brand betting and Aaron Rodgers nonsense in full display right there. But yeah, it's again, they are. I almost want to put an asterisk next to that, because remember that Rams team and their preseason odds were determined by what everyone thought Trent Green was going to do with their quarterback. Nobody knew who Kurt Warner was or was about to come on in looking like Superman. Everyone knew what the Commanders were going to be at the beginning of this year, and nobody saw this coming. And it really is. It's amazing how one play can be a springboard. That Hail Mary against the Chicago Bears felt like it turned around any prospects of the Commanders really doing this or not. And here they are. It should be a great, great championship Sunday. Again, if you're around Coder Madera and you can get up to Pig and a Pickle, go hang out with Kruger. If you're thinking about Super Bowl Sunday, we'll be in the back of the Halfway Club. Hopefully we'll see you there. Hopefully you're thinking about going down to Sam's Chowder House. Larry, I know that we got a few supers to get to here, and then I got a factoid about you that I have to tell you about, because you probably don't know it. And it's probably not even related to you in any way, but it'll sound.
I got to get a thought in on Quentin Post before we get out of here as well. But let's hit Post.
Quentin Post. Thank God it took 3 months to get to Quentin Post and 40 games to get to Quentin Post. With this entire time, the Warriors have needed some size, and now they got some.
Well, it's hilarious. I mean, they're talking about Vucevic, and it's like they have Vucevic. His name's Quentin Post. Richie says, does Saleh ask Kyle Shanahan for the first pick also to sign? He might want a defensive player on that first pick. He probably does. Kevin Wood says, member for 13 months. I will forever respect Damon for taking Baalke to task the day after Harbaugh was fired. That's the accountability Grant Cohn pretends he has with Kyle. All right, there we go.
Well, look, I remember asking, what did you do to help Jim Harbaugh get run out of town? Because everyone's pointing at you. Like, why are you still here and Jim is not? That's a little weird.
Trent Baalke's a survivor. He's a survivor. And for whatever reason, he just always survives. And but he didn't survive this one. And he's out in Jacksonville, and who knows where he's going next.
Well, it sounds like the reason why he didn't survive it is because, when Liam Cohn turned down the job, it seemed that Trent Baalke was probably right at the center of that. Oh, look at it this way.
Supposedly Belichick also wanted no part of Baalke and told Shad Khan that.
Job, right? Cohn interviewed for the job. He tells, Trent Baalke is still his GM, so he says, I'm not interested. Then all of a sudden, Trent Baalke is fired. Now Cohn's going to take the job. So reach your own conclusions.
But I'll say this, Cohn really, kind of treated the Buccaneers badly. I mean, he went dark on the Buccaneers, and I know it's like, you do what you got to do to get the deal you got to get, but I mean, wow. I mean, that's bad. I mean, it's unprecedented. I will say this, though. Schefter was going off on it like it was the worst thing ever, and it was Schefter himself who was trying to, the day before, going, nobody ever turns down head coaching money, to be a coordinator. Nobody in their right mind would ever turn down head coaching salary for coordinator salary. Well, okay, so you're basically saying that Cohen made a huge mistake, and then the next day when he about faces, you kind of dare him to walk away from it, publicly shamed him for taking the job, and then when he about faces 24 hours later, you're like, wow, I've never seen anything like it. Dude, you rooted this on. You're the one who was kind of shaming him for staying in Tampa, and then when he doesn't stay in Tampa, you're like, wow, look what he did. He didn't end around.
It's all
Yeah, he did. He did, but I mean,
it's all business. And Liam Cohn, I don't think has done that much damage to his reputation. It's not like he's leaving the Tampa Bay Buccaneers high and dry the week that football's starting or anything. I mean, it's freaking January. Like
I know, but it's like you agreed to. You're only we're all only as good as our word, and when you're not as good as your word and you're hiding out. I mean, here's the other. I mean, there's a bunch of things that are just kind of screwed up about Jacksonville. I mean, Jacksonville wanted Liam Cohn and was still pursuing Liam Cohn, but then they had Graham, the Raider defensive coordinator, board a flight from Vegas to Jacksonville when they knew that Liam Cohn was like their guy first and foremost. And Saleh almost got on a plane to go to Jacksonville. So I mean, it's like some people are like, well, they didn't do anything wrong. Well, and somebody was like, well, the 49ers interviewed, David Pauly. Yeah, but that was a virtual interview. Yeah, you're right. He had a virtual interview for an OC job that he was never going to get. But that's so much better than getting on a plane, getting a cab, this and that, flying across the country for an interview for a job you have no chance to get. I mean,
right. If you're going to screw me over, I see a distinction. Virtually. Virtually screw me over. Don't
right, exactly. Mr. Funny, nice handle, says, there you go. Thank you, Mr. Funny. Joseph Ernberg in the house. Saleh hire pointless when personnel is bad. Fans are going to bitch and moan next season about Robert. Just watch. Yeah, they absolutely will if they don't get better players. This is nice, but it ain't about this. It's about players. You backslid because of players. Let's just say this. I was having this discussion with Dieter last night. If by chance I walked into the Niner facility this morning and I walked in on Nick Sorensen in a screaming match with some 49er personnel person over who's to blame for the defense's backslide this year, as much as I think Sorensen should be out, I would side with Sorensen. If Sorensen's argument is, hey, man, it wasn't me, it was my lack of players, and if the personnel department representative was like, no, you had plenty of players, you can't coach, I would side with Sorensen and say, you know what, no, he didn't have the players.
Right. I would just take Devondre Campbell's football card and slide it across the table.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks. From me to you, thanks. Mark's Maine says all the NFL Chief stands forgetting how the Chiefs reacted last year just because a few calls went against them at the end of a couple games. Yeah, I mean, Mahomes was downright crying in one game. Remember that game? He was just like literally lost his mind. He was crying about it. Edward Austin just says, hey, there you go. Your wife's going to Vegas. There's a single right there. There's a single from Edward Austin.
Help her.
That's going to do it for us. Damon, you have a first of all, I'm going with the Commanders and the points, and I'm going with the Chiefs minus the 2. I want to go with Buffalo. I badly want to go with Buffalo. I do believe it's Josh Allen's time, but you know what? It's hard to win on the road. It takes a special thing to win on the road. Buffalo's already beaten Kansas City this year. You telling me that Buffalo's going to beat Kansas City twice, and the second time they're going to beat them in Arrowhead with the Super Bowl on the line? I'm not buying it. I like Kansas City to beat Buffalo again, and I like the Commanders to beat the Eagles without a healthy Jalen Hurts, and I like the Commanders on Super Bowl Sunday to win for Jaden Daniels. I think Daniels is going to win the Super Bowl as a rookie. I really believe it.
I think we're looking at Eagles Chiefs in the Super Bowl, and I will not be giving any pre-Super Bowl analysis at this time, Larry.
But you like Eagles Chiefs this weekend. Eagles Chiefs. Yeah, I'm going Commanders Chiefs.
I think home teams carry the chalk this weekend. I really do. There you go. That is the show. Again, thanks to Sam's Chowderhouse. Thanks to all of you for watching. Really appreciate it. Let's just let everyone know about what's happening next week. Larry, we will do a wake up on Monday morning, 9 a.m. on both of our YouTube channels. And then what you do on Wednesday and Friday next week is up to you, because I will be in Mexico taking a little vacation with the wife. It is our first extended time away from both boys in 5 years. We have never spent 5 days away from the boys until next week. So that should be interesting. Thanks to the in-laws for making this happen. We couldn't go on vacation without them checking in.
What kind of sitter bill are you going to have?
We're sending them to you, Larry. We're just going to send them over to you and Kev.
$20 an hour. I'm $20 an hour. I'm not sure if you would want to send them over.
I'm going to tell you right now, for $20 an hour, you'd be a bargain. You're lucky.
With all the teenagers I got in my house, you'd hate it. All of a sudden you'd pick them up and they'd be like, "Hey, they want to play video games. They want to play, shoot this guy and shoot that guy games."
They already want to do that, so that's cool. By the way, Fuji Simeon coming in late here with the 10 spot. I wonder if the Ford family made it under the table to deal with Baalke passing on drafting Aiden Hutchinson. In the draft, you and your family get a free new Ford vehicle, your choice for life. Yeah, maybe there was a deal there.
There you go.
I'll take the wrong player and the truck. I still believe, I know a lot of people say, Trent Baalke screwed up that Hutchinson deal, but I'll tell you, as sure as I'm standing here, Damon and Lowry, Trayvon Walker is a player, and I'm going to be vindicated with that selection before long. Everybody's going to see what I see, that Trayvon Walker is a special, special individual.
Whenever you can give Christian Kirk the kind of money that makes everyone think you might be a little crazy, you go ahead and you do it. You do it, Christian.
Actually, you know what? That's one of the one signings that Baalke made that actually kind of worked out. I'll give him that much. But
supposedly they're going to cut him. Supposedly he's like one of the guys that's going to get cut right away. So I don't know.
A great GM builds in off-ramps, Larry, and we built a few off-ramps into this contract that had nothing to do with torn ACLs. We can get out of things sometimes.
Let me tell you right now, who Brian Thomas Jr. Brian Thomas Jr. did not draft himself.